Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up. Hey there, it's Jordan, your host. If you've been loving the conversations on Changing the Game, I'm excited to introduce something new, the Nobody Cares Club, a show about building the life you actually want without worrying so much about what everyone else thinks. We're talking confidence, wellness, identity, relationships, and the reminder that nobody is thinking about you as much as you think they are. And that's the best news you'll ever hear. So stop waiting, stop overthinking, and get ready to be inspired to go after your dreams. Search Nobody Cares Club wherever you listen, launching summer 2026. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, I'm joined by Kylie Casey. Kylie is an athlete, coach, former recruiter, leader, and now the founder of the Interview Locker Room. Kylie grew up on the softball diamond with her dad as her coach and went on to compete at the Division I level at Virginia Tech. After graduation, she stayed close to the game through coaching, ESPN3 broadcasting, and her work with the Hockey Club. She then stepped into medical device sales before moving into recruiting, where she helped build high-performing teams and developed a passion for helping others reach their full potential. Today, she's based in New Jersey and is building the Interview Locker Room full-time. She's redefining success in this season of life as a founder, while also embracing her role as a wife and mom as she helps athletes show up with real confidence in their careers. Welcome, Kylie.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited for you to share your experience with our listeners. And I'm so excited to learn more about the Interview Locker Room because I love talking to founders. It's just so fun to hear how things work at the behind the scenes and just what's going on in your brain, honestly.
Yes. No, it has been an awesome experience. So I look forward to diving into it.
I love it. Before we get into the Interview Locker Room, I really want you to set the stage for us. So you played Division I softball. Can you just tell our listeners how that journey mapped out for you? How did you get there?
Yeah. Okay. So it started young, of course, right? In youth sports. I absolutely love the opportunity to talk youth sports whenever I have the chance. I think it's an incredible foundation for everybody at that stage in their life and then into the future, right, Jordan? We see it now like in our day today. But I grew up in a sports family. My parents had met working for the Philadelphia Flyers back in the day. So we grew up around the ice. We played a little bit of soccer. We did, land on my brother and I baseball and softball. And softball just kind of stuck. It became my sport. I trained a lot at it with my dad, and we knew pretty early that this is the path that I was going to take. I loved the game so much, right? I never felt pressured. It was always fun. And that's really how it got started.
I love that you have the background of really bonding with your family through sport. I think that can be such a special thing. And it obviously set the foundation for you and your values and your athletic career. So what was it like actually having your dad as your coach, or how did that work out?
Yeah, it was awesome for me. I know there's a lot of sometimes mixed reviews out there, right, in regards to having parents as a coach, but I was very fortunate that he was very level-headed in his approach. He understood the game, which I think is incredibly important. There was a good balance there between my dad being ultra competitive and loving that side of the game to my mom also being like that unsung hero in the background of making sure it was building character and discipline and work ethic and all of the things off the field too, right? So from a family perspective, I think that's one of the common bonds that sports can bring is people together, and I love seeing parents and families grow in that space.
Yeah. Did you ever feel pressure having your dad as your coach, or was it pretty just chill for you? What was that like?
So maybe like an unspoken pressure, right? I think at the end of the day, when you're the daughter of the coach, right, like he's going to be harder on me, but a harder element that like he knew that I was ready for and that I accepted in that. But with that being said, I wouldn't trade it, right? Like he, at the end of the day, our motto as a family, especially him to me when it came to the playing field, was keep me proud. And I love that because it sets that tone really early on that I'm already proud of you, right? But KMP is what he used to say to me, whether he was leaving for work or I was about to hit the field, and just keep me proud, right? And I think that does a really good job of just setting that tone.
That's so special. That really does like take the pressure off you. Keep me proud. You don't have to make me proud because I already am proud of you. Do you continue to say that with your kids today?
Yes, it just sticks, and I've been fortunate to share it with some other people as well, just in conversation that have young kids in sports, and they're like, "Can I take that? Can I use that?" And yes, that's exactly what we want, is to be able to spread, more of that fun back in the sports world, in and everywhere in life, but especially in sports, to keep kids in sports longer.
Yeah, keeping kids in sports longer is so important. I think that's a really big issue with today's kids. I think there's just like a lot of pressure coming from so many different angles in our society. And it's tough to keep the love of the game, I think, even at a young age now.
Yeah, no, you're so right. And at the end of the day, we have to remember the long game, right? The journey. Like every time I think back, over the last 20, 30 years, like yes, sports were the foundation, but eventually you do hang up the cleats, right? You take off the jersey for the last time, which is really, really hard. But then it's, how do you transition? How are you able to then shift your focus of all your talents and your strengths from an athlete perspective into other areas of your life, whether it be the working world, as a wife, as a mom, in my situation, that's the fun part of it, right? Is being able to take those talents elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I look back at my own experience too, and I was really fortunate to have some really great coaches that helped instill the love of the game in me for a long time, whether it was all the different sports I tried as a kid and was not good at. And then I was able to find volleyball and have that really stick. But I just, yeah, you talking about your experience with your dad, like that is so special. I mean, my dad was I think my fourth grade basketball coach, and I was a terrible, terrible basketball player. Like my mom has videos of me like doing tap dance on the court while I was like playing defense.
It
Like
just wasn't your thing. You were exploring, but it wasn't your thing.
it wasn't my thing, but I think just going back to what you said, like I never felt pressure, especially because my dad was the coach, but it was just truly about like let's try to get these kids to like sport. And maybe
Yes.
it's not this sport, but let's just it needs to be fun before it can get super competitive, I think.
Totally. I think the best metric when it comes to youth sports, right? We kind of joke about this, is like who signs up next year? Like
Yeah.
retention is really that number one focus right now, because once they're back, then you have another opportunity to bring out the best of them in a different way, or help them fall in love with the game again. And, you might not know very early on, where that kid is going to take their playing career, but you can set that foundation, like you said earlier in the conversation, of morals and values and work ethic really, really early through that.
This is why I love talking to athletes, Kylie, because like we have the same experience from youth athletics. We are both very fortunate to have a good experience, but I think all athletes, regardless of whether your experience was maybe positive or maybe a little bit less than positive, we all have the same value that like, hey, this is really important to instill in the next generation and make them come back and help them to love the game. Like I can just like feel the passion coming from you. And this is just like why I love having these conversations.
Yeah, it's a unique space, and one that I was out of for a little bit. So, yes, I played college softball at Virginia Tech, and I stayed and I worked at the university for a little bit. But then when I ended up coming home and shifting into the medical device space, I wasn't around sports a ton. We always watched sports, like loved watching sports, never lost that love for the game there. But I wasn't necessarily coaching or very in tune with what was going on in that landscape right now. So since pivoting back more into the sports world now in that focus, I missed it so much. My eyes are getting opened to a lot of the things happening like on the youth sports space today. And I'm really glad to be a part of that conversation again, and really trying to drive like competition, but through fun. And, yes, we can take pressure, but that pressure has to be, depending on your child, kind of like wired in a way to bring out the best in them versus halt them, right? Or make them overthink
Totally.
the situation.
Totally. I can't wait to get more into your experience because I know you have so much perspective now through the interview locker room and also having children of your own now, seeing the sports lens maybe through their eyes as they start to get older and get into that space. So, can you just build the bridge for us? I mean, talk about how you ended up at Virginia Tech then. How did that work out?
Okay, so this is one of my favorite softball stories. It ties back to my dad, but I was at a showcase tournament in Newtown, Pennsylvania, and I had no idea Virginia Tech was even there that day. I knew a few other coaches, some from the ACC, from the SEC were there, but had no idea Virginia Tech was there. And I was in the 3 spot that day, so runners on first and second in the first inning of the game, and Jordan and I hit a home run over the center field fence that lands at my dad's feet. But it wasn't just like any home run. This was my first home run ever. So like talk about a rush of emotions. I practically sprinted, around the bases. My dad's just trying to act very calm, cool, collected in the outfield. Like this has happened before, but that was kind of the catalyst to a game of a lifetime, like truly a showcase game. I felt like 9 or 10 ground balls were hit to me that really challenged my skill set, and I had to deliver. And then, I doubled off the fence. I had another situation. I was a lefty that, high slapped a shortstop to beat it out. And I was like, just one of those games. And then afterwards, I found out that Virginia Tech was there and they had asked my coach, in a way to try to get me to come down to campus. And I don't think it was until my sophomore year at Virginia Tech that I told my coach, I was like, just so you know, that moment, like that was my first home run ever.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. And your dad just having the ball land at his feet. What a special memory. And talk about like performing under pressure. That was
So
the moment.
yeah, performing under pressure, things are meant to be. It was just one of those moments that you get the chills like a little bit still thinking back to it.
Yeah, I love it. It's so good. So tell me about your playing career then at Virginia Tech. You went on to coach afterwards. I guess did you have to go through any sort of identity shifts kind of as that playing career was ending? Did you know that you wanted to coach right away? I have all the questions. So tell me about that period of your life.
Yeah, there was a lot, right? So I don't think there was like one defining moment that said, okay, this is exactly what I want to do. But taking the jersey off for the last time, I just didn't feel like I was ready, right, to leave that environment, to leave Blacksburg. And I decided to join the coaching staff. I will say though, Jordan, it was very, very short period of time. It wasn't even something that I continued through the whole season. I had another shift. I actually ended up speaking at the induction of our new football practice facility that year. And after that, the AD did pull me aside and say, hey, do you have interest in coming over and working in the athletic department with the student athlete fundraising side of things, which is where and how I ended up in the Hokie Club. So I did that for about just over a year, which was great because my brother was a Hokie at this point. So we got to spend some of that time together in Blacksburg. But ultimately, I missed home. I was ready to make that transition back to New Jersey and then use my business degree, which is how I ended up in medical sales.
Yeah. Okay. So making the transition maybe a little bit easier out of athletics was probably a great move for you. I know a lot of people, when they cut it cold turkey, it can be tough.
Yes, you said it earlier. It's an identity shift, right? Like you figure out who you are, not representing yourself as that athlete anymore. I think we'll always be athletes at heart, right? Like we continue to train, we have something to strive for, we set goals for ourselves, but your team dynamic shifts. And for me, that is why I really loved the medical device environment because that's exactly what you're doing. You're transferring environments. In sports, you're around high performers, self starters, people who are competitive. You perform under pressure, and then you slide into medical device, and it's a very very similar environment.
Were you also surrounded by a lot of athletes in med device?
Yes, definitely. And not that there's not all different types of background in medical device, but because of that environment and that landscape, you do see a lot of athletes. You see a lot of military background, law enforcement background, all for the same reason, right? There's high impact, there's a mission to it, and they do well performing under pressure.
Yeah, I work with a lot of candidates here at Shift Group actually that always say, I want to be in med device. That's the goal for me. I want to get into that environment, but sometimes it can be hard to get your foot in the door in that space. How
Sure.
were you able to break into it? Was it because you already had work experience, or what really helped you stand out?
I think the athlete background, right, or a military background, a law enforcement background can help because people will see those natural traits that come from those environments and say that could make a really good fit for our team. But once you get that opportunity, and sometimes it's through a referral, like for me, I did have an internal referral that was at least able to get that conversation started, which I'm thankful for. I champion that from the outside looking in and vice versa, right? I sat on both sides wanting to be at Striker and then working for Striker. So I always champion that referral side. But with that said, once you get that opportunity, that's when the real work starts.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, so much of the job search now, I want to say, unfortunately, is like who you know. And I don't want to say, I know that can be a really tough thing, especially for new candidates to overcome. But
Sure.
did you have a connect that worked in the organization that you personally knew, or were you just out there hustling and networking to find someone that could take a chance on you and refer you?
Sure. So it was a mix of both. So there was actually another former Virginia Tech athlete that was there that was able to be some of that champion for me. But with that said, the hustle of networking never ends, right? Because at the end of the day, that falls into your preparation. So no different than if you were going to go and play against, one of your biggest rivals. Like you're going to prepare for that, whether it's watching game film or trying to see how they did in their past few performances, like doing what you can to prepare to still line up in the best way possible. You're doing that in the job landscape as well. So yes, I had an internal referral, but I wanted to build that team around me and continue networking with other people within the company, learn from them, right? Like what they did, what success feels like now that they're there, because preparation is huge when it actually steps into that conversation with the recruiter.
Yeah, totally. It's like you could be one of the most talented athletes or interviewers or salespeople, but if you're not putting in that preparation beforehand, you're leaving yourself vulnerable for someone else to beat you out for that position or
Definitely.
go above and beyond.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So you spent some time in med device sales, but then you ultimately ended up in recruiting where you spent a lot of time leading recruiting at Stryker. So can you just talk a little bit about that transition? What made you want to go into that space?
Yeah, so for me, I love selling for Stryker. I mean, I love Stryker in general. I always say I credit them so much to just like who I am today on so many levels. 7 years at a company is a really long time, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
of growth that happens there. So to be there in sales, to be there in talent acquisition, to work with some of the best leaders that I've ever been fortunate to have a conversation with, it has shaped so much of my outlook, right? Just in this industry. Ultimately, I made the transition into recruiting, for a couple of reasons. One, I really wanted to see that side of the business. I knew if I went into that side of the business, I would see sales from a completely different lens, being able to work with those sales leaders. For me, also, with my family kind of dynamic, like taking shape, and my husband and I, getting ready to start a family, for me, that's what we wanted. We wanted, all along for me to be in a position where I could have a little bit more control of my schedule. So, that's another reason on a personal side that I made that transition. And it was all for the best. I mean, for me, my network grew tremendously switching to that side of the business. I learned a whole new skill of interviewing people and identifying talent and helping really put together the puzzle, for teams and help leaders build their teams.
Yeah, I think it's cool that you were able to go into an organization, get your foot in the door in sales, and then make a move to a different space. I think so many young candidates think, okay, I have to choose the route for me and it has to be the right one right now forever. Like, and they don't realize that your career is long and you might end up in places that you never or rooms that you never expected to be in. But I love that you said, I wanted to learn that new side of the business and see what else I could do in my career.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a, a great fit for you, I'm assuming, because it helped lay the
Yes.
path for what you're doing now too.
Well, it feels weird to say round out your career at
Yeah.
this point in my career, right? A lot of people are rounding out their career at all different levels. But for me, that's what I felt like I was doing. Like, I had sold at a previous company before as well. So I had sold for some time, wanted to learn another side of the business. I know if I went to talent acquisition, I would have the chance to work more directly with sales leaders throughout the country to learn that side of the business, working with HR business partners to understand like what they're doing and what intricate role they play in connecting sales with leaders and then the HR side of things. And then, I mean, my network, like I said, was able to grow tremendously. And for me, I got to learn a lot more about people, which helped me think about myself in a little bit of a different lens as well. And I know we'll talk about it some, but I love the startup space, right? And at the end of the day, I was able to talk to a lot of candidates that might have been coming from a startup and just hearing the way they think and the way they talk about their experience. I knew ultimately, like, okay, this was going to be a shift that I'm going to make at some point too.
Yes, I love the startup space. That's mostly where I've worked, so I know we'll dive into that as well. But before we go there, I just want to know
Sure.
for the athletes and veterans listening who
Mhm.
have dreams of getting into the med device space or think that might be something that's interesting to them,
Mhm.
you've interviewed a ton of candidates, you've seen a ton of talent. What are some things that always stood out to you in interviews that you were like, I think this candidate is going to be a great fit? And then maybe the flip side, what are some things where you're like, I don't know if this is the right fit for this candidate?
Okay, sure. So for me, you feel energy right away. As soon as that candidate picks up the phone, you feel energy and you can get personality as you go into that conversation. But the three biggest things for me, and probably in this order, just based on the way the conversation flows, is going to be self awareness, preparation, and then coachability. And I say that because a lot of times I'd open up my calls with, I have your resume in front of me. So tell me about yourself, like fill in the gaps. What do you want me to know that's not on that resume? And if that starts going like 3, 4, 5 minutes short in, and I have to cut them off and kind of pivot back to the rest of the questions to get through, that's just a little bit of a lack of self awareness to me in understanding the time and how to get to something quickly. From the preparation side, we talked about it from an athlete perspective. If you're going to play in a big game, you're not going to not prepare, whether that be mentally, physically, watching game film. The same thing lines up for an interview for your career. You want to make sure you understand that company, research the leaders, the teams, wherever you can find information, the products. If I jump on with you and I'm like, what did you think of the products? And sometimes it happens where they're like, I couldn't find them or something like that, right? Like we need to dig deeper. We need to do more research to show that you're committed to this team and that I feel like your work ethic is going to be unstoppable. And then the coachability piece, I love to give a little bit of feedback at the end of the interviews just to see how the candidates responded to it, but then also to see if they had questions for me. Because I think coachability, also falls in that category of growth, right? So are they taking the time to understand how they can either be better or know more for their next round of an interview?
I absolutely love that advice because I just work with so many young candidates here at Shift, and it's so, I don't want to say funny, but when I see like that self awareness at the beginning of the interview can make or break the rest of the conversation.
Sure.
And it can also be the thing that drives you forward or holds you back because being able to tell your story succinctly is so important. And be
Yes.
aware of the interviewer's time. I think it's just something that probably comes with practice. I look back to maybe the first few interviews that I did, and I'm
Yes.
like, oh my God, like that was a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, because it
Preparation, right?
preparation, and it is kind of a skill. Like I think sometimes you got to crash and burn maybe early in your career, but it teaches you so much. But yes, that self-awareness and the coachability and the preparation, like all so important.
It really is. And I think all of those things we just mentioned would be the downfalls, right? Like if someone doesn't prepare, that's a pretty big red flag for what that would look like going forward. And, even if I have to jump in and pivot the conversation to move away from that long winded first answer, how they respond to that and react to that is a really good sign of how they'll respond, in feedback from their leader. So there's some things that I look for when I'm talking to candidates.
Yes, I love it. I think candidates listening, take notes because those things are important. And I think this is a good segue into you taking the leap and making or building your own company, the Interview Locker Room. Can you talk a little bit about it? What is it so that listeners know?
Yes. So the Interview Locker Room was founded mostly because I saw a gap, right? So I had my experience as an athlete, then in the recruiting world. And then I originally thought about these high school athletes and how they're up against so much right now. They're up against NIL and RevShare and the transfer portal. And they need any chance that they can to highlight themselves in a really good light in front of those college coaches. And for me, there was a gap there. We talked about communication and speaking with clarity and speaking with confidence and practicing that communication style. And I don't think we train that. I know we don't train that. We train on the on the field performance all the time. We train strength and conditioning. We take care of ourselves from a nutrition perspective. We train the mental side of the game, but we aren't training the conversation. And I think that's incredibly important. When a coach says, tell me about yourself, what are your natural strengths? What's your story? To know exactly what you want to say. These athletes are smart. They have it in their head, but actually being able to articulate it back to a coach in a what feels like a pressure situation can be a lot harder. So the Interview Locker Room, I have a 7 pillar framework that takes athletes through preparing for those conversations. It really mirrors how it would look if you were interviewing for a job. So I like to say it's a 2-for-1 opportunity, because at the end of the day, yes, you're training those skills right now for those college coach conversations, but you're also going to need that again one day, whether it's internships in college or post college life, that you're going to go ahead and look for your job. And Jordan, with my transition out of striker into fully going into the interview locker room, I'm opening that space up more now. So it's actually building into the ability for recent grads to come into the interview locker room to take their college experience, right? And those skills and everything they learned and learn how to transition that into their career. And then even the pro side of things, that's where I started getting some feedback of, hey, these players come out of the pro leagues and they need to understand how to tell their story to pivot back into a career. So it is slowly but surely expanding.
I love what you're doing because I think there's so many pieces of what you're doing that's so important to an athlete's identity shift or career shift. And like just what the high school athletes are going through now with the NIL, I mean, that makes my head spin.
Yes.
I say unfortunate, but also fortunate enough to have played in a time before that where it
Sure.
wasn't another thing that we had to worry about at least, or it was another thing to think about. And now there's all this added pressure that we're putting on the athletes. And I totally agree because interviewing is a skill. Being able to go and sit in front of a coach, it is an interview. And I wish somebody kind of would have said that to me
Is.
too. Like when I was going through the official visit process, like I didn't treat it as an interview. I thought, wow, this is so exciting. They want me on their team. I get to go be a part of the team for a weekend or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
it's not really what it is. They are evaluating you
Totally.
just as much as you are evaluating them.
And they're evaluating who's with you. So I always ask parents to jump on these calls when they can. That way what they learn becomes dinner table conversations. We can't practice this one time, with me or in a group session. They need to become daily, weekly conversations as you prepare, because there's so much that goes into it. And as we walk through that framework, we talk a little bit about being able to tell your story, right? But we also talk about how you prepare for the questions that coaches are going to ask you. What questions do you also have prepared for the coach, right? To show that
Yeah,
coachability and your commitment to the school, how to show up with polish, in confidence, leadership skills, right? Everything that's really needed to show I belong on your team for, yes, my athletic ability, but also just for who I am both on and off the field.
yeah, because I think being a part of that culture fit is so important too. Your
Mhm.
skills could be great and you could be a star player, but if you're not the right culture fit, maybe, or if
Yeah.
you're not dialed in a way where you're asking the right questions, it might throw a coach off, just as it
Yes.
would throw an employer off.
Absolutely. And every team needs something a little bit different at any given year. You even look at like sales teams. Sometimes they really need that hunter on their team. And sometimes they're like, we have enough of those. Not that we don't want everyone to always hunt, but hey, we need more of a farmer in this situation. We need someone who does a really good job of keeping those relationships strong. Coaches are no different on the college landscape. They're looking for certain pieces to fit and solve that puzzle to bring out the best team, both skill and culture wise, because they know how important that locker room is.
Absolutely. What is one of the biggest gaps you see when you start working with an athlete? What do they usually all need to improve on?
It's being able to share that story. It's all in their head. They have it there. If we take the time to have a conversation like this and go back and forth with it, they get to that answer and they're excited about what they want to share. But that's why the preparation part is so important. Taking that time to, one, sit and write out your answers, like be able to actually understand, dig deep, think back into your playing career and like what that story looks like. What are turning points for you? Where are times you've failed and you've grown from it? Some of that's really hard to answer on the spot if you've never thought of it before. But once you
Mhm.
can, I'll say, write that down, keep that like documentation, that prep work that you're going to use, it becomes second nature to be able to have those conversations. And that's what we want, because we don't want these to be canned, answers. We don't want coaches to think that we're just giving you the answers to share with them. That's not what we're here to do. Because at the end of the day, we want you to interview that coach in that school in the same way and make sure it's a good fit for you too. But it's giving you the tools and the resources to prepare, build that confidence, and then be able to do it on your own.
Your story reminded me of a time that I interviewed a candidate or I was talking to a candidate here at Shift Group and it he told his story to me. We were prepping for an interview and then I said, let's do it again, gave him some pointers, and then he did it
Mhm.
again. And on the second time, he told me that he was the captain of his lacrosse team in college. And I was like, why didn't you tell me that in the first time that you told the
Yeah.
story? and I gave him some pointers and he told a story again. And then this time around, he told me that he was training for the New York City Marathon. And I'm like, why are you not telling these amazing nuggets in the first time around?
Yes.
And I think it's just because they've never practiced telling their story out loud. I think also as athletes, we're kind of told, be humble. It's about the team. It's
Yes.
not about you. Whereas in this chapter of your life, you have to own that story. And yes, you don't want to take the ego route, but you
Sure.
have to showcase your skills. And there's no other way to do it unless you talk about it confidently.
And that's where the coachability piece comes in, right? You can be confident, you can own your story, but just make sure you're coachable on that back end. The ones that have that, too much ego usually don't want the feedback. Whereas I'm a big believer is when that coach stops talking to you, when that coach stops giving you information, that's when they've kind of given up on you. But if your coach is constantly coming to you, trying to improve you, they see something in you, they have belief in you, they have trust in you, everything that we would look for from the youth level all the way up through the pros. Like, accept that. Be happy, be proud that a coach is still coming back to work with you.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that pro athletes even struggle with this because
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're at that high of a level, it's maybe assumed that you have the skills to tell your story and you have this strong belief in yourself and you can translate that to any arena you go to
Sure.
afterwards. And I think we do overlook with those professional athletes that no, that is a huge transition. Like truly their sport was their whole identity. And now they have to go do something else. And it might not be their first choice. Like they might be bummed, they probably are very bummed that their professional career maybe isn't
Yeah.
lasting as long as they would have hoped, or maybe it's just that natural time to retire. But regardless, I think it's so important to not count those athletes out as well, because it is just as important for them to learn those skills stepping into a new arena.
You're right. And the arena is going to look differently, which automatically makes you feel a little bit differently, right? They might be the all-star on the field, but then you step into, we'll use medical device for an example, into the hospital, into an OR. Like, yes, maybe from like a feels perspective of like, hey, I need to perform well under pressure, things like that, it might still be similar, but you're speaking a whole new language now. And depending on like what you're having a conversation with a doctor about, that is going to be a whole new language to you. So we have to like go back to the basics, relearn the game, pretend we're, on the bench or in single A, like until we really understand that information. And then we can go out and strive to be that all-star again on the team.
That's a good analogy. Going back to single A, getting your foundation, and then working your way back up.
Yes, as so many candidates, when I talk to them, they just can't wait to sell, can't wait to sell. And I just try to remind them, you need to know what you're selling before you can sell it. So you're a sponge when you come in. Figure out who's great at what, learn from them, capitalize on those situations, study, 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 so you can become the expert. Then you have a chance to truly go sell.
Yeah. And just talking from your medical device background, I just love the like the work ethic that goes into that space, because you truly have to learn the product inside out, because it is a very, very big job that you are doing. Like being in the OR with doctors, like you got to know your stuff. And
It's a
so it
big
does.
responsibility. Yes,
Yes. Like it really goes back to that preparation that is fundamental. Without that, you will not succeed.
you're so right.
Kylie, what is next for the interview locker room? Where do you see this shaping up? Or what are you the most excited for? Give us a little sneak peek.
Yes. So, there's a lot going on right now. And I say that because one, we're so close to like official launch, the actual website, it's had the landing page, but we're pretty close to going live with it. So I'm excited for the website to be up and running where everyone can go and see all that information. But, in addition, I've had so many conversations with other great founders out there. I said I love the startup space, and I think that's because you just realize how committed and how focused these other founders are on to just making an impact in this space. And now working with athletes again from youth all the way up through pro, impacts pretty much my word, right? In 2026. So where can we bring that impact even in coming together with other founders? So there's a lot of those conversations going on and how we can partner and work together. And that's where the interview locker room is going to really take shape. You're going to see those three tiers, the high school side, the recent grad side, and the pro side. And then I love these conversations going on with other founders to see how we can make the biggest impacts as well.
You're filling such an important gap. I know we are both very passionate about helping this next generation of athletes move into their next arena. It can be a really challenging time. And I say that from experience. And I admire what you're doing, and I'm really excited to see where things continue to lay out.
Thanks, Jordan. Yes, I'm excited as well. And, my little, I guess, plug to any founders out there is, just keep going, keep connecting with people, like keep engaging. You start to realize like how on the same page you can be with many people in this landscape. And when you work together and you come together as a team, that bigger impact can be made.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, Kylie, I want to know what fills your cup outside of work, because we as athletes tend to wrap our identities up in exactly what we're doing right now. So,
Yes.
what gives you that sense of fulfillment outside work?
Yeah, my family for sure. So my husband and I, we have two young daughters. They turn 2 and 4 coming up here in May. So it is just fun times in the Casey household. When I say impact, that was a lot of the reason too that I stepped aside from striker Jordan is like I really wanted to make an impact in all areas of my life. And with these girls being so young right now, I wanted to be able to pour into their lives as much as I can, be there to support my husband in his growing career, but then also step back into an area that I love so much was the athlete side of things. So, involved with my own startup, a couple other startups where there can be more to come on that as well, but all still in the athlete space, the athletic space. And again, impacts, right? I want to be very intentional with where I'm spending that time, that energy, just to help people. I love to bring the best out in people, whether it be with my own family or people that I'm working with in that space.
I can feel it. I can feel that's so authentic and real to you, Kylie. And moms are superheroes. Like the fact that you're able to do all these things, I'm sure I look at other moms and I'm like, I don't know how you're doing all that, but you do it, you get it done. And so, yeah, moms have superpowers for sure.
Yeah, people will be like, how do you do it? I'm like, honestly, sometimes I just pray for the energy. Like, help me keep going because you just never know what each day is going to bring. Like, you have your whole day planned out. I guess we can go back to med device with that one as well. You have your whole day planned out, and then you're going to have to hit multiple curveballs through the day, but I wouldn't trade it. So, absolutely love it. Just pray for energy and, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love it. Kylie, thank you so much for being here with us today. I
Yes.
really, really enjoyed learning about your story, and I can't wait to see what the interview locker room does next. So I just have one final question for you as we wrap. I
Yes.
always ask it at the end of the show.
Okay.
What does changing the game mean to you?
Changing the game to me is allowing more opportunities for these athletes to capitalize on their strengths and their talents for life. If I want to go back to the interview locker room with that, my motto is winning the interview, training for life. Because at the end of the day, sports are an incredible foundation that we can tap into so many opportunities to make an impact in people's lives. So let's just pour back into each other and help each other elevate and bring out the best.
Thank you so much, Kylie. Where can our listeners connect with you, or where can they find you?
LinkedIn. Right now, that is where my heavy presence is on LinkedIn. So please look for Kylie Casey there.
And I'm assuming once the website's launched and ready to go, you're going to post about it on LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely. I have the landing page up there right now as well that you can go sign up for, early access to when that does come. But yes, we're going to be coming with it here soon and excited to share it.
Awesome. The interview locker room with Kylie Casey. Go find her on LinkedIn. Thank you to everyone listening, and a huge thank you to you, Kylie. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Jordan. Thanks for having me.